Language of communication.
Язык общения. Английский для успешной коммуникации. Автор Жанна Федоровна Коноваленко.
Unit 1. Meeting people. Read and retell the texts. In all countries, manners and behavior are very important, but different countries have different ideas about what good behavior and good manners are. Nowadays, many people travel abroad, so it is important to learn a little about what to do in a foreign country. Here are some rules of introduction which we should know. Here they are. Men are introduced to women. Young people are introduced to older ones. Old friends are introduced to newcomers. A young girl is introduced to a married woman. Men and young people should always stand when people are being introduced, but ladies may remain seated. Women are never presented to a man unless he is the head of the state or a member of the royal family. The most simple form of introduction is the pronouncing of the two names. Examples: man to man. Mr. Stock, Mr. Parsons. Mr. Stock, this is Mr. Parsons. Man to woman. Mr. Parsons, Mrs. Stock. Mrs. Stock, this is Mr. Parsons. There are more formal forms of introduction. They are man to man. Mr. Stock, may I introduce Mr. Parsons? Mr. Stock, I'd like you to meet Mr. Parsons. Man to woman. Miss Stock, may I introduce my assistant, Mr. Parsons? Miss Stock, I'd like you to meet my assistant, Mr. Parsons. The most formal forms of introduction are: Mr. Stock, allow me to present Mr. Parsons. Miss Stock, may I present Mr. Parsons? In addition to formal forms of introduction, there are also a number of conversational forms, such as: Mr. Stock, have you met Mr. Parsons? As a rule, when introducing, a person says something like, may I introduce Mr. Parsons? And then, turning to Mr. Parsons slightly, says, Mr. Stock. That is all necessary, but it is possible to add, Mr. Parsons has just returned from a visit to Germany. A person may give some other information which will give the introduced people a chance to start a conversation. The usual response to an introduction is, how do you do? Which is a sort of greeting and not a question about your health, and the best answer is, how do you do? It is very good to add the name of the person introduced. I'm very glad to meet you, Mr. Handshaking is very rare in Britain, but it is the correct thing to do on the continent. When an Englishman passes a friend in the street, he only touches his hat. He doesn't shake hands when he stops to talk. British people occasionally shake hands, especially when formally introduced, but they do not shake hands with people they see often. When, however, two businessmen meet, they usually shake hands. Greetings. Englishmen say, how do you do, to a person when formally introduced or when they meet him for the first time. This formula may be used at almost any time of day. They say this without expecting any answer, except, how do you do, and they do not shake hands. They say good morning to people they know little or when their greeting is more formal. This formula is used before lunch. To those they know very well, they say simply, morning. They say good afternoon to people they do not know well between lunchtime and tea time. They say good evening to people they do not know very well after 6 p.m. To those they know well, they may just say evening. The proper universal informal greeting is hello. This formula is usually used with the first name. After this informal or friendly greeting often comes the question, how are you? Farewells. When we leave, we usually say goodbye. But there are a number of other less formal ways of parting, such as bye-bye, bye, see you later, I'll be seeing you soon. Be seeing you soon. Farewell, when parting for long, etc.
Read and retell the text. When British people meet, they do not shake hands as a rule. Instead, they smile and say a greeting, good morning, or something of the kind. When businessmen meet, they usually shake hands, especially when they are formally introduced. If we want to address somebody whose name we can't remember, we may say just, excuse me, what was your name? Or, could you kindly tell me again, or repeat your name, please? British people usually never say good day or good night when meeting people. They say good morning, from 12 at night to 12 o'clock at noon. Good afternoon, from 12 at noon to 6 in the evening. Good evening, from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock at night.
Unit 2. Applying for a job. Employment. Read and retell the text. If we want to get a job, we can apply to an employment office. We should fill in an application form and a CV. Then we'll be invited for a job interview. Before a job interview, we should prepare carefully. Tips for applicants. 1. We must be sure of our own personal background and memorize information presented in our application form. 2. We should be ready to say why we applied for the job and what salary we expect to get. 3. We will have a chance to ask some questions. We can ask about working hours, holidays, chances for promotion, car allowance, etc. When applicants come out after the interview, they can be asked, how did it go? What was the interview like? You can say to the person who gets the job, congratulations.
Read and retell the text. How to write a CV. If you apply for a job, it's possible that you'll be in competition with a number of other candidates, so your CV is important for the interviewers. They will take into consideration strengths and weaknesses of all the candidates and decide whether you can cope with the job or not. So the CV is a document of great importance. It's not only a list of facts. Your CV should sum up your personal, educational and career history, and it is an indication of your strengths and weaknesses as well. Here are a few recommendations concerning your CV. The CV should be typed, not handwritten. You should use good quality paper. A CV should be sent with a covering letter explaining which vacancy you are applying for. A CV shouldn't be sent unless you're asked to. It's a confidential document. A CV should include your name, date of birth, your address, your email address if you have one, phone number, at work and at home, your work record and other additional information. In your work record, you should start with the most recent job and work backwards. Don't leave out any vital information. If you spent a few years travelling, say so. Don't include any negative information about yourself, such as exam failures or lost jobs. Be positive about yourself, but don't lie. Some companies keep CVs on file, so a candidate shouldn't ask for his or her CV to be returned.
Read and retell the text. Employment. As a matter of fact, there are some key questions which interviewers usually ask applicants. CVs tell about qualifications and work records of the applicants. What the interviewers want to find out about is the applicant's personality. Such questions as, what do you like most about your present job? And, what do you like least about it? Are almost ritual. Travelling or meeting new people are standard answers. More interesting is what applicants don't like about their companies. They might not like working weekends or overworking at their current company. Applicants should be quite honest when discussing their strengths and weaknesses. The interviewers can thus receive detailed information about the personality of the applicants rather than just their certificates of qualifications.
Unit 3. Presentations. Read and retell the tips. Some tips on how to prepare for presentations. People who are going to make a presentation are recommended to establish a clear objective. Make the information interesting. Talk about what your audience expect you to talk about. Use notes to assist. Have a strong opening. Use your voice to effect. Speak with relevant volume and intonation. Choose suitable words to achieve your goal. Use silence to give power to your statements. Use visuals to improve impact and clarity. Handle equipment professionally. Practice beforehand. Think about the cultural environment. Handle questions positively. Stand during the presentation. Summarize at the end. Dress for the occasion. What is not recommended? To be boring. To speak too quickly, for too long, or too monotonously. To present information which is too complex for the audience. To tell irrelevant or inappropriate jokes. To read from a scripted text or visuals. To block your audience's view of visuals. To speak with your back to the audience. To use distracting gestures or face movements. To forget to summarize at the end. To sit during the presentation. To wear unsuitable clothes.
Read and retell the text. What presentations are made for? Some tips. Presentations are very common nowadays. There are a few main reasons why people make presentations. The first one is launching a new product or service. The second reason is usually launching a sales campaign. There are some things that you should remember if you want to make your presentation successful. Adjust your language so that everybody can understand you. Don't use too long or too complicated sentences. Try to visit the room where you'll be giving the presentation beforehand and organise it according to your own needs. Make sure that you are familiar with the equipment. Try to use it beforehand. Use visual aids, charts, diagrams, overhead projector, flip charts, if you have a lot of information. They can make a presentation more interesting, more impressive, and easier to understand, but make sure they are appropriate. And finally, it is necessary to summarize at the end.
Read and retell the text. Some more hints about delivery or presentations. Most people are nervous at the beginning of a presentation. Try not to worry. Be quiet. Try not to speak too fast, especially during the first couple of minutes. This is the time for establishing your rapport with the audience. Show your interest in the subject of the talk. Look around your audience as you speak. Eye contact is also essential for maintaining a good rapport. You will be able to see if the audience is interested or bored. When you are delivering your presentation, stand rather than sit. Speak clearly and distinctly. Use words and sentences which you are comfortable with. Be ready to deal with any questions, even if they are hostile. Polite and diplomatic answers are a good disarming policy. Don't forget that a good presentation is very much a performance, and if you are delivering the presentation, you'll have to behave like an actor.